All right, today on Pat's Car Garage, I want to talk about axle shafts and joints. And I want to explain the difference between U-joints and CV joints, but from a practical perspective and which one you should run. Quick rule of thumb, if all you do is moderate or light wheeling, overlanding style, right? Not rock crawling or, gunning it up tall hills or steep hills rather, and most of the time you're on the highway or just, dirt roads, just moderate, easy wheeling. Get yourself a CV joint. I'll explain why. So these joints have a few advantages relative to these. The biggest one is, look, it's sealed. There's no dirt that can get in here. It's sealed, and these joints will last a very long time. For reliability, these are the ones. This is covered, so none of the road salt and grime can get in here, no mud, nothing. So these joints are very well protected. These, however, given reasonable budgets here, I'm excluding very expensive axle shafts like RCVs, for example. These, for like your OEM replacement type of parts, will be stronger. And you can make them even stronger by getting a sealed U-joint. So these will be better in terms of strength for, like rock climbing or not rock bouncing. You wouldn't go rock bouncing with shafts like these, they're way too small. But, like rock crawling, climbing up big obstacles where you're really loading up the drivetrain, these will be a little bit stronger than these for sure. However, there's a caveat with everything, right? When these break, they tend to take out other parts with them. Either the shafts themselves, or I've seen knuckles get blown up, I've seen the axle C get blown up. When these fail, other stuff breaks. So like, yeah, the U-joint itself might only be, $30 for a 5760X or $60 if you want the painted version, which you can tell I paid for. But when these fail, like I said, other parts will break as well, and then you might end up stuck, even though the only actual failure was the U-joint. But then, again, this flops around, these bend out of the way, it hits the knuckle cracks, and now you got a big job on your hands. When CV joints fail, they tend to be contained within the joint itself. And the nice thing is, these are rebuildable. You can take these clamps off, and you can rebuild these. There are kits available for them. And again, typically when these fail, it's going to be all contained in here, and I've never seen a CV joint break other things. Maybe one guy managed to do this, but I've never heard of it personally. So these, again, maybe a little bit weaker, but definitely less disastrous when they do fail. Now, there is one major problem with U-joints, and it's the fact that we only have a single joint in here. As you know, or maybe you don't know, these are not constant velocity joints. So as this turns, the inner shaft is going to want to spin a little bit faster and then a little bit slower as it goes through this twisting motion when your wheels are turned. Now, what is the problem with that? The problem happens inside the differential, because you have this shaft potentially spinning at a different speed and this shaft, but the speed is constantly changing. In an open differential, this is totally okay. Your side gears can walk back and forth to accommodate for this difference in rotational speeds. Let's call this torsional vibration to just get the point across, because this might happen at a very high speed. Now, if you have lockers, and when you flip your locker on, your U-joints happen to be in phase. You just got lucky. They're in phase. They're like this. Of course, this would be pointed the other way, but they're like this. Great. You don't have any torsional vibration because the U-joints stay in phase. So both inner shafts will accelerate and slow down at the same speed when you turn your steering wheel. However, if you're unlucky and you flip your locker on like this, now your joints are completely out of phase. And this shaft will want to speed up while this one wants to slow down. If your wheel is on a loose surface, that's okay. The wheel can take up that slack. But if you're, let's say, not rock crawling, but climbing up a big rocky obstacle where you have a decent amount of grip in your tires, something has to give, right? You're going to be binding these shafts like this. And the weakest link in that is going to break. So typically it's going to be the U-joint. So your U-joint might just explode and you might be like, well, why did that happen? I wasn't, gunning it or anything. So why did the U-joint fail? Or the worst case is your side gears blow up. Your side gears or your spider gears inside your differential blow up, and then you have a big job on your hand, and that's a very difficult trail repair. This is why for lockers, CV-styled axles are better, but of course we're back to the original problem where these are weaker. So now, although you don't have the torsional vibration problem anymore because the velocity on both ends are always the same, well, now the joint itself is weaker. So unless you spend big bucks on RCV axles, you'll end up with problems in your CV joints anyway. At least, if you're not completely crazy when your front locker's engaged, you're not going to have random failures in your U-joints, or in your CV joint, rather. So that's really the difference. I'd summarize it as such, they both have pros and cons. These are going to be typically weaker, but they will work better for most scenarios. These will be better off-road. Just be careful with lockers. Like, I rather build a reliable off-roader than just like a balls to the walls crazy off-roader. So, if I were running U-joints, I wouldn't want to run a locker in the front. Put in a limited slip or a torque biasing differential. That's going to be okay because the internals can handle that torsional vibration. But a locker, yeah, you're kind of playing with fire with U-joint style shafts. In both cases, honestly, like, if you're going far out and you're going to do some off-roading, it's good to have spares. On Dana 30s, these are super easy to replace regardless of the style. You do need the correct tools. You need the 13mm 12-point socket to pull them out, and you'll need a breaker bar to break the axle nut loose. But otherwise, both will work. Just keep spares, be careful. If you get axle hop, lay off the throttle, and overall, you'll be fine. Your Dana 30 axle will come with greasable U-joints. If you forgot to grease them for a long time, I would recommend replacing the joint itself. And to be fair, greasing axle shaft joints is kind of annoying. I'd rather run sealed joints for a couple of reasons. These are a little bit stronger, and because they're sealed, you have less chances of getting dirt and grime and road salt inside the joint. So that is something to keep in mind of. I personally prefer running sealed joints. Even on my drive shafts, I run sealed joints. Just less stuff to grease, and I'd rather replace a U-joint every 10 years than grease all of them every year. So, that's just a personal preference. If you want to run greasable joints, that's totally okay. Keep in mind, in axle shafts, they are stronger. Because the cross doesn't have to be drilled inside, the cross can be solid, they will be a little bit stronger. So another quick mention is you might be thinking to yourself, well, if I personally prefer CV joints, why am I switching to U-joints? Even though I'm not planning on doing any crazy wheeling that would maybe require the additional strength of a U-joint. Well, the fact of the matter is, up here in Canada, it seems to be hard to get good quality CV joints. When I rebuilt my axles 2 years ago, you can watch those videos. They're called How Not to Rebuild a Dana 30 and How Not to Rebuild a Dana 35. One of the things I did, I replaced the axle shafts in the Dana 30 in the front. I was kind of on the fence between U-joints or CV joints. I ended up settling for new CV joints. They were a little bit cheaper than U-joints, but the problem is, after 2 years, my right front has started clicking, despite me not abusing it at all. So Dana, I don't believe Dana ever made OEM CV joints for the Dana 30, so it's hard to find good quality CV joints. If you're lucky, maybe your local car parts store have, their own house brand of CV joints that are known to be good, but, I bought mine from Napa, and my left front is fine, but my right front is clicking for some reason, so, yeah. I'm disappointed that after 2 years, what's supposed to be a joint that should last 20 years broke after 2. So I'm like, you know what? I'll try the U-joints. I'll give the U-joints a shot. I know they're not as good for on-road, but it'll be fine. I have an open differential in my Dana 30, so torsional vibration isn't a problem. And again, these are brand new shafts, so they shouldn't have any type of issues with them. I tried reusing my old shafts, but they were far too rusty. It was impossible to pull the C-clips out. and then the cups would no longer fit, and whatever. My old shafts, I had to throw them out. They weren't any good anymore. So, you know, that's what it is. I'm going to try these U-joints out. I'm not anticipating any real problems, especially not with an open differential. I would have rather the CV joint where I know that no salt can get in here because it's clamped shut. And you have this nice little boot that, you know, prevents any junk from falling in. But, well, you know, you gotta... I don't like running cheap parts in my cars. I don't like when random stuff breaks. I'd rather just have reliable cars. So right now, the more reliable option, despite its drawbacks, are U-joints. So that's what I'm going to.